Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. Today, Amber and I want to talk a little bit about alcohol use, drinking, and maybe some other substances, we'll see. We were having a conversation before the podcast started just about we each had a drink or two this weekend, right? And we were talking about how we felt like crap, how it affected our bodies. And we kind of got into this conversation about just here in our country, like weird societal norms around drinking, social norms around drinking, how drinking just seems to be like interwoven into like everything we do as adults in America when it comes to like leisure and fun and relaxing and even self-care sometimes and things like that. So we wanted to unpack that a little bit. I will give a disclaimer, right? Obviously, if you are a person in recovery or if you're a person that has like a substance use disorder, an alcohol use disorder, you know, your relationship with drinking and with mind-altering substances is probably a lot different than a lot of the things we're going to discuss here. Right. Neither Amber or I are in recovery. I've had periods in my life where I've chosen like just to, you know, completely be abstinent from alcohol and other drugs. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But we are not people, you know, that are struggling, I think, in that way. But I think what I was saying a second ago is I think that like alcohol use and even like drug use, mind-altering substance use, we can call it, really happens on a spectrum, right? And you have people that really, really struggle, right? That can never pick up because it'll lead to like a path of destruction. Right. And then you have people that it doesn't really seem to matter here or there. But I think a lot of us fall in the middle where we're using alcohol as a crutch, where we're using it to mask anxiety, self-esteem issues, depression, things like that, where we're struggling in social situations without it. And I kind of want to have a conversation about that, about those people in the middle. Right. So I think I fall in the middle. Would you say you fall in the middle?
I think I fall in the middle.
So tell us a little bit, Amber, just like your thoughts, your experiences, things like that.
Over the last, I say 3 months probably, I have been trying to reduce the amount of alcohol that I'm, consuming. I got a Whoop. If you don't know what a Whoop is, it's like kind of like an Apple Watch type of a thing where it like tracks your heart rate and all these things. So I was like on this journey to figure out like what, how is my sleep affecting my health? How are all these things? And I quickly realized that if I had one drink, it didn't matter what time of the day it was. It didn't matter if it was one drink, a half a drink, 2 drinks, didn't matter. It was going to mess up my sleep that night in the worst way, like having a heart rate stay for, 3 to 4 hours of my sleep at a rate that it would be like if I was out taking a walk that entire time.
Wow.
And so I'm like, well, this can't be good. It is really disrupting like how much rest I'm actually getting. And I was really trying to prioritize that because I knew that my sleep, like I'm a good sleeper. Like I don't have a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep. But in that, I also knew like something is not right because I'm sleeping for, I'm out for 8 hours, but I wake up and I am tired still.
Right.
And so just kind of looking at that and what was affecting that, right? So that's kind of where the journey began. So I was like, okay, well, let me just kind of stop drinking and see what happens. Yeah. And my sleep it improved. I, was really focusing on kind of my sleep hygiene and like what, making sure I was going to bed in time to have enough sleep and those types of things. And then I started talking to some other people who also were like, hey, I realized that it's affecting me as well. And so they had stopped drinking too. And had found like these different alternatives, right? So these different non-alcoholic spirits and things like that, so that when they were in social situations or they wanted to have a cocktail, but they, didn't want to have the alcohol in it, that they could use those. And so, I started kind of on that journey to see like, oh, could this be, something that I enjoy? Because I am still in social situations, and there are times where I'm like, certain mixed drinks, like they taste good, and yeah, you can just leave the alcohol out and just have it as a kind of like a juice, right?
Like a mocktail thing, yeah.
but sometimes there's that like bite in it that you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these were ways that could happen. So that's just kind of been my journey so far. I've had, I think, over the last 3 months, maybe like 3 drinks. Yeah, still messing up my sleep.
That's crazy. Yeah. I do think like that was for me. I mean, I really started drinking like in college. I went to University of Dayton, which is a pretty big party school. And I mean, it just seemed like everybody drank, right? Like definitely on the weekends. By the time it was like my senior year at UD, I think there was maybe 2 nights a week that we like didn't go out and drink. And like, in college and when you're young, at least me and my group of friends, like we drank to get drunk, right? Like now that I'm older, right, and an adult, like I might go out and sit on a patio and have like a drink. Like I wasn't doing that in my teens and early 20s. Like there was no one drink. Like what's the point, right? And I feel like I did that and I just really never stopped. I lived downtown. I was walkable to a lot of bars and where people went out, and I just drank to get drunk all the time, like multiple times per week. And then I had a couple things happen. Like I bought a house where I had to drive, right, to get to the bars, and I've never drank and driven because I mean, I just, one, my job, two, that just feels like a really terrible idea. So that kind of like slowed me down a little bit. COVID came right after that. I dated somebody in recovery, and it's just like I stopped and I remember thinking like, God, to your point, I feel so much better.
Right.
Like I have so much energy. Like I am enjoying my weekends in a way that I never have before. Like I can get up early, I can do good things, but it was always, I feel like during those years, it was really hard for me to like go out with my friends that I had always been drinking with, or putting myself in situations where like, it's like the point was to drink, and I think it's hard when you're somebody who's not in recovery. Like when you're in recovery, I think we've done a great job as a community and a society to create like alternatives, right? Like alternative fun things to do. But to me, those seem like very separate than what people who are not in recovery are doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I feel like I've kind of found myself these last couple of years just like, I go to events to see my friends and to see people I know, but like truly everyone is there to drink and I'm just there kind of like weirdly chilling, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's something that needs to be fixed. I don't know. It's just been an interesting, I would say, experience for me. And it makes me wonder why, like why as a society are we so obsessed with getting drunk?
Yeah. When I was growing up, I had kids very young, so there was a long period of time there where I wasn't really drinking. Like I was never a big drinker. Like I would have drinks here and there, but I was like in mom mode, right? And so I would have drinks on occasion, and then there were periods of time where I tried to like wine, and I would drink wine, and then realize like this is really terrible, and. And then there were other periods in my life where, I was having drinks, a few times a week. It wasn't like I was stressed and I needed it. It was more like that's what the other people around me were doing, so I just did it.
Yes.
So through those times, it's, it's just been kind of like back and forth for me as to drinking. So it's never been like something where it's, like long term, I've been doing this. I look back and I'm like, sometimes, like when I said, I was doing it because other people were doing it, I didn't have the self-confidence at that point in time to, be like, no, I'm not going to have drinks, but I'll come with you and like we can do fun things together.
Yes.
To say that and also to do that, to act on it, because I would have felt like I couldn't be as loose or as free or as whatever. Like I would have felt more uptight, more anxious. When we were out dancing or we were out doing whatever, part of it is stepping back from that, doing some of that inner work to clear that kind of bullshit out. Yes. Now I could go wherever and
do
not
that.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting piece to me because all I want to say to that is like, yes. Like I am a pretty introverted, shy person by nature. Nobody believes that when I tell them that, but I really am. Like I am an introverted person. I'm a pretty self-conscious person. I like deal with like a lot of thoughts, like people think I'm weird, like they don't want to hang out with me, like, things like that. And I think, once you get 2 drinks in you, those thoughts go away.
Oh, yeah.
You don't think that anymore, right? And like you think you're funny and other people who are also drunk think you're funny, right? And you're like chit-chatting and doing all that stuff. So I think that was why I loved drinking so much for so long, because some of that social anxiety piece that I think is just part of like my personality and who I am as a person dissipated. It went away when I drank. But I also think that double-edged sword of when you drink all the time, and you touched on this with like the Whoop, like when you drink all the time, your body is in a constant state of like euphoria and recovery, up, down, up, down. I feel great. I feel like shit. I feel like shit. Let me drink so I don't feel like shit. You know what I mean? And it's like I feel like are almost in this like survival mode physically, in a way, when you're drinking multiple times per week, that you never have time to sit back and do the work to get comfortable. Because I think about that, you know, and people have heard me say on this podcast before, like, sometimes I just feel like my 20s were like a fucking blur, right? Like, I just was like kind of checked out, kind of dissociated. And I think a lot of that was because of my drinking.
Right.
Because the times when I wasn't working a hard job, right, and I wasn't sleeping, I was partying. And I wasn't really checked into my life then either, right? Because I was under the influence. And so I agree with you. I feel so lucky now that I have the confidence and the ability to be like, hey, I want to hang out with you guys. And like, no, I'm not drinking. Like, get me a water, right? Like, I'm cool.
Right.
I used to be so nervous. Like, I would never want to walk into a bar. Like, if all my friends were at a bar drinking, I would feel bad. Like, I would need to get a drink, like, in order to justify, like, me being there. Right? You know what I mean? And, like, now I walk in and the server's like, do you want something? I'm like, water. And you can tell they're kind of probably irritated. And sometimes I'll get, like, a snack or something. But, yeah, I think that was a huge piece of it, is doing the work and feeling confident enough to be like, I know who I am and I know what I want, and today I don't want to drink for whatever reason.
Right. What was it that I felt like the alcohol was bridging a gap for? And I think for me, like, if I just like look through all the scenarios in which I was like drinking because other people were, I think for me it was more around, once I had a drink in me, I was more body confident. I was more confident in the way that I looked, the way that I moved, the way that I perceived other people saw me. Like, I just thinking through it, because I'm like, yeah, I would do that in friend relationships and romantic relationships, because it was just like a way for me to not be so critical of my own body when I was in certain situations.
That's interesting, because that kind of goes back to like kind of like your core shit, right? And then like my core shit. And it's like alcohol kind of bridged that gap for us. And I think what alcohol does, I mean, I'm no fucking doctor or anything, but I mean, it slows down that voice in your head, right?
Oh, yeah.
So those of us that deal with a lot of like, whether it's like negative thoughts or anxious thoughts or rumination, right? Whatever you want to call it, or whatever's going on in your brain, like alcohol just takes that away, right?
For some people though, because I've heard other people say that it makes it worse. Like, you know how you meet people and when they have drinks, like some people are really like fun to be around when they drink, and then there are people that you're like, oh no, don't.
Oh yeah, they get kind of,
there's like a tipping point, and then they become like the mean drunk. They get real in their feelings, and they're like, you know, crying about literally everything.
That's true. That's fair. But then it's like, yeah, because it's like it takes that inhibition away.
Yeah.
To maybe have you be like cool and carefree, or like caring about
and
everything.
maybe that does go back to the core wound, right? Like if my core wound is that I can't express my feelings, then maybe when I drink I do end up expressing all of my feelings. Or maybe my core wound is that I don't stand up for myself. I never allow anger to happen. And then when I drink, I'm angry about everything. Like, I'm just releasing it all. Because,
I do think we have to think about that. And that's one thing that I've done. Yeah, so I just, like, stopped drinking. And it was, like, you know, I had really, like, slowed down for all those reasons I said. And then I had a period, it's about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, like, where my mental health was the worst it's ever been in my whole life. And I was struggling, but I was like, I'm going to try to have fun. I'm going to try to go out with my friends. And I drank, and I didn't even get I would say I was right between tipsy and drunk, right? Like, I wasn't crazy by any means, but I was under the influence. And it's like every single, kind of what you were saying, like sad thought, anxious thought. I mean, it was just 1,000 times worse. And I just felt like totally disconnected from my body. And I'm like, I don't think I am mentally in a place where I can drink right now. Kind of like where you're like, I'm not physically in a place where I feel like I can drink right now. And so then, I stopped drinking for like a long time and was able to do some of that work and some of that stuff I was talking about. But I don't know. And so now I ask myself when I want to drink again, I'm like, why?
Right.
Why do I want to do
Right.
it? Do I want to do it because I'm looking for an escape hatch from my life? Do I want to do it because like I'm feeling like anxious and self-conscious and for some reason I can't break out of that bubble with the group of people that I'm in and I need like a little boost, you know? So I think, and we talk about that all the time, like examining our behaviors and thinking about the why of them. So that is something that I ask myself now in the last year or two as I've kind of, you know, here and there I'll have drinks, but I always want to say why. Like
Right.
I had a stressful week a couple weeks ago and I'm just like, I started having like almost like, I don't know if you call them cravings, but kind of like fantasy thoughts. Like, man, I just want to get fucked up and pass out. Like this Friday, I just want to like drink and feel and not feel a feeling. And that to me is like, whoa, you definitely can't drink this Friday, right? Like what is the reason that I want to drink? And what would be the reasons that I am going to choose not to drink this time around?
Right. And maybe that's, you know, it's just like another breadcrumb that you're given on examining your behavior and examining what comes up, right? I mean, you know, we hear a lot of people that are using mind-altering drugs in order to get insight, right? Like where, you know, people are using, God, what is it called?
The psilocybin.
Yeah.
The like microdosing or ketamine or something like that. The psychedelics.
Right. And I don't, you know, I mean, I'm not like saying go out and use that and find out what your issues are. I mean, I think there are definitely ways you can do that without, you know, using any type of substance. But if you're somebody that has drank before or has used a substance over a period of time, you know, maybe it's time to go back and look and see like what comes out of me when that happens and what clue does that really provide to me as to what needs to be healed. And you're not going to heal it through using the substance.
Because using the substance is inherently taking you away from yourself.
Right. But then you can say like, oh, okay, like, you know, use it as another growth opportunity to say like, hey, this might be something that I want to look at. This might be something that, you know, I want to try to heal. And I know that for me, like, drinking allowed me to be more comfortable in my body. I think now I'm more comfortable in my body without that. So there's just less. Yes. I'm like, well, I could have a drink. And yeah, like, you know, there's like a relaxation to it and things like that when you're not getting, you know, super drunk. But like, I don't need that for the other purpose that I was doing before.
Well, it kind of, when you're talking about it in that context, which I think makes a ton of sense, at least for my relationship with like alcohol or, you know, any other like weed or anything like that, you have to think about like, what are you looking for from others, right? Like whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or something like that, like what are you seeking? Because that's a clue of what you need to be giving yourself.
Right.
And I think the same thing goes for alcohol. What is alcohol giving me that I'm not giving myself?
Right.
And I think that's the thought you need to have. And if you really just think like, you know, I feel I am good, I am in a good place, I'm with people I love, and I would be having fun if I was drinking or not. So like, fuck it, I'm going to have a drink. Then that's probably like an okay time, right? To like pick up and have a drink. But if you're like, I want to drink because it will give me X, Y, and Z, I think the question needs to be, how could I give that to myself instead? I mean, for me, like, you know, looking at romantic relationships and stuff, I spent so much time trying to get other people to give me what I wasn't giving myself, right? Yeah. And I kind of think of it in that same context. You and I don't have the answers for this, but I wish more people had conversations like this because I think the biggest, weirdest thing about it is like this peer pressure to drink.
Yes.
And just like people like being weird to you when you don't.
Yep.
We were talking before this, like I think a lot of us have fears like, oh man, if I'm not fun, if I don't go out and party, if I don't stay out late, like people are going to stop inviting me to do things. They're going to, you know, maybe the core wounds come out like me. I always think like people are going to think I'm weird or crazy or, you know.
Yeah.
I just wish that we could be better and more intentional. And maybe this podcast is part of that, of being like, it's okay to take time off from drinking.
Right.
You don't have to have like, quote unquote alcoholism, right? To be
You
sober
don't have
for
to
a while.
justify it either. That's the thing that bothers me is like, it was like somebody wants a qualifier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? Right. And we started out at the beginning of this and I gave you a why because that's what I feel like I'm supposed to do.
Yes.
Is say like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I can't, it maybe isn't enough of a qualifier to just be like, I don't want to.
Right. And why is that?
Right.
Like, why is that? Because it would be easy if somebody was like, hey, Jill, do you want, like, we got chips and guac. Like, do you want some? I'd be like, oh, no, I'm cool. And nobody would think anything of it, right? But if they're like, hey, like, what do you want? I'm going up to the bar.
See, I worry about that too.
Really?
I worry about food too. Like, I am
like
always.
You should eat food.
Oh, God, I feel guilty when people offer me food and I don't eat it. I always feel guilty. I don't always eat it. Like, that's a boundary that I've been able to put into place a while ago because I was just having so many problems with so many different foods that I was like, well, I can't do this. And it all goes back to my health. Like, once I realized for my body it's not good, I'm like, okay, well, I can walk this back. But then that's my justification, right? I can't have that. I just can't.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just think people are so weird about it. Mm-hmm. Hopefully not, maybe not everybody feels that way, but right. I feel like people are weird about it. And I will say it's another thing. I think it's important to have people who are like, I'm cool with not drinking. Like, I do feel like since I've kind of been on this journey, like, it was really weird and really uncomfortable for me, honestly. Like, thinking back, like, 2021 and 2022, like, I have, like, my main friend group was people who just, like, drink and party and go out a lot. Mm-hmm. And, like, it felt really weird, but I feel like I kind of, like, had some of these conversations. I was feeling this way. Some other people were, and we've normalized it a little bit more, right?
Right.
And you have to go out of your way to, like, be intentional about, like, let's do activities that don't require drinking, right? Mm-hmm. Like, let's, I don't know, walk, kayak, do things, craft, do things that don't necessarily require that. But I think it's important, to make that space for people if it's something you're thinking about. It's just a really strange social thing.
When you talk about the social piece of it, you do get some of that external stuff, but it's really like your perception of what's going to happen if you have to tell somebody that you're not going to drink, I think. Because, there are going to be people that are like, oh, I don't want to hang out with her because she's not drinking, but I don't even know that that's 100% true because I've been around people who have been like, I'm not going to drink, and I've never been like, well, don't invite them. Right? Unless it's like we're going to a bourbon tasting. Well, no, I'm not going to invite you to that because that's going to be, you're going to be uncomfortable. I'm not inviting you because I don't want you there. I'm not inviting you out of compassion for the fact that you're going to be uncomfortable. Right?
Or why would you want to pay $60 when you can't even partake in the activity?
Right. Mm-hmm. So, but like just normal things where there's going to be drinking, like, I would invite somebody who wasn't. It's your choice. It's your choice to come. It's your choice to partake in whatever is happening. Right? It'd be the same thing. Like if I had friends that were like, I don't like to dance, but we were going to go to a club. I would still invite them, like because there are other things to do.
That's true.
But I think for ourselves, like the perception is because there are questions. Like anytime that you change what you're doing, there are going to be questions.
Sure.
People are going to ask things. For me, it feels like I have to qualify. Like I have to have a good enough reason to convince you that I'm going to do this, and there really should be no reason that I have to convince you of anything. But really what I should be thinking is like, oh, people are going to ask and I'm going to share this with them and maybe share something that sparks an interest in them to think about something a little differently.
Yes.
And
I think, there has been this, like, trend of, like, sober Januaries. Don't you feel like you've seen that the last couple of years?
I've seen a lot of sober months. I don't know. I feel like...
Yeah, sober. Yeah, we're essentially people are kind of just saying, I'm going to take 30 days and not drink.
Right.
And it's interesting. I watch a lot of people, and we've talked about this with, like, New Year's resolutions, and I think this happens no matter what the goal is, but I watch a lot of people say, I'm going to do a sober January, right? I'm not going to drink in January. And they, like, can't do it. Like they can't make it.
Right.
I would challenge most people that, maybe feel like they fall in the middle of that spectrum to just say, like, I'm just not going to drink for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, for 30 days, whatever. Maybe you do it, maybe you don't, but I think it gives you some insight, right, into, like, how hard that is for you. Because I think for me, until I truly kind of stopped, like, when my mental health was, like, in the toilet and I'm like, whoa, I need a break. I think I would have told anybody, like, no, I'm not dependent on alcohol. Like, I don't need that level of discomfort like that however many months it took me to kind of adjust to not drinking was really, really interesting to me. I don't think I truly had a good understanding of how dependent I was on it in certain situations.
Right.
And to your point, and how I needed to build some of that confidence to be like, this is just who I am and what I'm doing. So I do recommend it for anybody. And because now we know it's like literal straight up like poison in your body.
God,
I mean, it's so bad for you.
Well, I think we
drink.
always knew that. Most people have more access to see how their day-to-day, like how their day-to-day health goes, like their heart rates and their sleep patterns and all that. We have more access to that with the technology that we have. And I think before we could just kind of fool ourselves.
Like chalk it up like my overall life is stressful.
Or like I never get a hangover when I wake up, so it doesn't affect me, right?
Yes.
Because that's not the end all be all, right? I mean, there are lots of days that I would drink that I wouldn't wake up with a hangover, and I got up and I got moving and I was fine, but my body still was tired.
I find myself, I can be really irritable after a day. I think it affects not only your physical body, but like your emotions a little bit too, your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want, like, I would just challenge people if they've never just, like, done a break, just to do it.
Right.
Just to see how it feels, see how your body feels. I know for me, like, I'm a big, I, like, love snacks and sweets, and I like not drinking because I can eat more snacks and sweets and, like, maintain my weight.
True.
I mean, surely, like, we don't talk a lot about, like, the freaking calories in alcohol, which is, I always find that interesting, too, when people are like, I'm going to do a diet, but then they're still drinking like 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you're sabotaging yourself.
Like, that would be a real quick and easy way to
cut out some
to
calories.
cut some things out, but yeah.
But yeah, I think just something, we talk a lot on here about like wellness and the journey of self-discovery and things like that. And I just, from my own experience, I think it would have been really hard for me to do the work that I've done, to gain the insight that I've gained just about me and my feelings and my behaviors and all of that stuff, had I not had some pretty significant periods where I was not drinking or smoking or doing any sort of mind-altering stuff, because it is just one other avenue for us to escape ourselves. And so that's why I thought, we should talk about it today.
Yeah. When you go into these spaces where you say, like, okay, I'm going to, this is something that I've not really thought about. I've just done it kind of on autopilot, right? Like, I'm just out there, when my friends want to go out, I have a drink. When I go out to dinner, I have a drink. When I'm hanging out, go to the
I think
pool.
When families get together, like my family's like, we're all here together. Let's have a glass of wine, right?
Right. And so, we go on autopilot. We just do those things. Anything that we do on autopilot deserves a review at some point, where we say like, oh, okay, well, I've been doing this for a long time. Why am I doing it? What happens if I stop doing it for a minute, right? And seeing what comes up. And then that's the growth, right? What comes up when I stop doing something? It may be that you start feeling things come up that you're anxious in social situations. There are certain people that now your relationship is scratchy with them, and why was it okay while you were drinking and not now? Maybe those things aren't good for you.
Right.
But you've been like, well, when we drink and we're together, this relationship is fine. And when I stop, it's no longer fine, which really means that it was never fine, And so just like, taking a step back and really looking at your life in a different way to see, like, where do I have some opportunities for growth here? That's with anything. Like I said,
there's all sorts of things,
shopping,
video games,
gambling,
shopping. You picked, when we did our 60 Strong, you said, I'm going to be done. I'm not going to online shop for 60 days.
And it was hard.
But it's like, I think, and so much we talk about a lot in this work is like, you peel back layers, right? Like you're like an onion, like Shrek style, right? Like you're an onion. And like, to me, stopping drinking is a honestly really easy way to like shed a layer for a little bit to see what's going on underneath, exactly like you were saying. And that's why, I think it's definitely worth looking at for sure.
Yeah.
So that was Jill and Amber's thoughts, sober, curious thoughts. And hopefully, I think there's a lot more discussions like this happening, which I think is good. Like you said, we need to be questioning all sorts of things about what we're doing on autopilot, just so we can be more intentional about the things we're doing, the behaviors we engage in, the people we spend time with. So there you go.
if you're interested in any of the alcohol-free cocktails, and like I've tried some alcohol-free liquors that you just mix with your own cocktails, I'm going to be posting about it on social media. So just keep an eye out for that if you're interested in any of those things. And I'll kind of tell you which brands I liked and which ones I didn't. And or if you have things that you're like, you all should really try this, it's really good.
Yes,
let us
tell us.
know, because there are a lot of things out there. And
I am glad too. I do feel like restaurants are having mocktails more, and there's some of this. There's a way to kind of like do fun, almost like what feels kind of like indulgent things, right? That are not alcoholic, which is cool. So yes, give us your tips and tricks and recs. If anybody here has done a sober January or a period of sobriety, or I have friends who have just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with the drinking. Would love to hear what's come up for you, what you learned about yourself, all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, pull a card for us. Call it.
All right, let's take a deep breath together and set the intention that we'll receive exactly what we need from this podcast today and from this card pull today, and that we'll be able to look kind of inward at some of our habits, the things that we have been doing on autopilot for a long time, and how they affect our lives, and if we want to use them as growth opportunities at this point, because you get to choose.
Yeah,
you don't have to grow if you don't want to.
That's so true. You don't have to.
Nope, and a lot of people don't. But you aren't one of those people because you're listening to this podcast.
Exactly. So. We're here to grow.
All right. So what we got was the waxing moon, which is the energy is gaining momentum. Jill, you pull these cards a lot. Tell me about this.
So this card basically is just like, I mean, essentially there's some momentum. Whenever I pull waxing moon, it's like, all right, things are about to pick up a little bit, right? I think all of our lives are characterized by, sometimes it feels like we're just kind of like in this waiting period, and then there's these periods of whether it's leveling up or change or something different. I pull this card and it's like, all right, something's about to get real. Something's about to come up. Something's about to change.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the roller coaster is getting a little bit more exciting. So which is good. And maybe in the context of this conversation, I think about perhaps some of us are ready for changes, right? And that change is coming if we embrace.
Right, and maybe we're gaining some momentum in building this confidence, right? Building this confidence to step outside of what we've always done and saying like, hey, you know, I feel like for me, this is a better choice. And that is because we're building the confidence, we're able to gain the momentum to start moving forward with what we actually want. Because I know right now, just in the world in general, in the universe in general, like there is a lot of change happening right now. It's not all the way to fruition, but like we're starting to gain that momentum. And we were in a period where we were kind of paused for a moment. And I think, you know, this podcast will come out far after this this time right now, but I think that where we are right now is we are kind of paused and we know it's coming, and the undercurrent is gaining momentum. And so then we're going to be able to kind of fully step into what we are manifesting, and hopefully that is, you know, a growth opportunity for you and the ability for you to step more into your authenticity in the world.
Yes. And yeah, to me, it's just like this card is like the universe is giving us some of that energy. Yeah. So are we going to kind of like step into it and find that vein and let it carry us? Right. Are we going to tap into it? So I love a waxing moon. That's one of my favorite cards to pull.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll catch you guys next time. And until then, have a wonderful couple of weeks and be well.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.